Imagine you're wandering through a fog-laden English village, the kind where every creaking gate and shadowed alley seems to whisper secrets. It's late and the air is damp, clinging to your skin as you stumble upon a crumbling stone bridge. Over a restless river, they're half buried in the mud, you find a yellowed newspaper. Its ink smudged, but its headline stark. Murder in Warmsley Vale, truth buried in the flood. Your heart races as you read about a crime so shocking it tore the village apart. Yet when you ask a passing villager, their face pales and they hiss, "That's the forgotten crime. We don't speak of it." Why would an entire community conspire to erase a scandal? What truth is so dangerous it must be drowned in silence? Today we're diving into Taken at the Flood, where Hercule Poirot, the world's greatest detective, unravels a web of greed, betrayal, and a mystery that refuses to stay buried. This story will grip you, twist your mind, and keep you guessing until the very end. Let's step into the fog and begin. It is the autumn of 1946. In England is a land still reeling from the scars of the Second World War. The cities are pockmarked with bomb craters, and the countryside, though seemingly untouched, carries its own burdens, families torn apart, dreams deferred, and hopes pinned on a fragile peace. In the heart of Devonshire lies Warmsley Vale, a village that appears to be a postcard of rural tranquility. Its thatched cottages cluster around a stone church, and the river that winds through the valley glints under the weak October sun. But appearances, as Hercule Poirot knows all too well, are often deceiving. The great detective, with his immaculate mustache and a mind as sharp as a razor, arrives in Warmsley Vale, not for a case, but for a rare moment of respite. The war has tested even his legendary little gray cells, and he yearns for the simple pleasures of a quiet stay at the Stag Inn, where he can sip his tisane, read the local paper, and let the world's troubles pass him by. Yet as he steps off the train and breathes in the crisp air, Poirot senses a tension that hums beneath the village's serene surface. The villagers' smiles are too tight, their greetings too curt, their eyes too quick to dart away. Something is wrong in Warmsley Vale, in Poirot's instincts, honed by decades of unraveling human deceit, tell him that his holiday will be anything but restful. Poirot settles into the Stag in a cozy establishment with creaking floorboards and a hearth that crackles with warmth. As he sips his herbal tisane, he observes the locals gathered at the bar, their voices low but charged with emotion. The name Rosaline Claude surfaces again and again, spoken with a mix of resentment and curiosity. Rosaline, it seems, is the young widow of Gordon Claude, a wealthy man who perished in a London air raid in 1944. His death was a tragedy, but the aftermath was a scandal that still festers in Warmsley Vale. Gordon, patriarch of the Claude family, had promised his wealth to his siblings and their families, who lived comfortably on the expectation of his fortune. They borrowed money, bought homes, and planned futures, all on the assurance of Gordon's generosity. But when his will was read, it delivered a devastating blow. Every penny went to Rosaline, second wife, a young Irishwoman he married. Just before his death, the Claude's brothers, sisters, cousins, and in-laws were left with nothing but debts and shattered dreams. Poirot's mustache twitches as he listens to the barmaid's bitter whisper. She's no grieving widow, she's a leech, sucking masculinized by greed. The detective's eyes gleam with interest. A disinherited family, a sudden heiress, a village simmering with resentment. This is no ordinary drama. It's a puzzle, and Poirot's little gray cells are already itching to solve it. The next morning, Poirot takes a stroll through Warmsley Vale, his polished shoes clicking on the cobblestone path. The river, swollen from recent rains, roars beside him, its muddy waters churning with restless energy. The locals call it the flood, a force that can reshape the land in a single night, washing away roads and flooding fields. To Poirot, it's a potent metaphor for the emotions he senses in this village greed. Envy and desperation, all rising like the river's tide, ready to overflow. At a small tea shop, he meets Lynn Marchmont, a spirited young woman who has just returned from serving as a wren during the war. Lynn, with her sharp wit and sun-kissed freckles, is a breath of fresh air in the stifling village. She's engaged to her cousin, Raleigh Claude, a farmer whose broad shoulders and quiet demeanor hide a growing frustration with his family's plight. Over a pot of Earl Grey, Lynn shares her unease about Rosaline. She's not what she seems, Lynn says, her voice low, her eyes scanning the room for eavesdroppers. Hey, there's something haunted about her, like she's carrying a secret too heavy for her. And her brother, David, he's trouble. Always watching, always controlling her. Poirot nods, his mind cataloging every detail. Lynn's words paint a picture of a family on edge, their resentment focused on a young widow who holds their future in her hands. But what is Rosaline hiding? And why does David Hunter guard her so fiercely? That evening, Poirot is invited to a dinner at Furrowbank, the Grand Claude estate, where the family's tensions are laid bare. The dining room is opulent but faded, its chandeliers gathering dust, a silent testament to the family's lost fortunes. Frances Claude, the sharp-tongued wife of Jeremy, the family solicitor, dominates the conversation with barbed remarks about Rosaline's undeserved wealth. Her words drip with venom, and Poirot senses a woman who masks her desperation with pride. Jeremy, her husband, is quieter, his face lined with worry, his fingers drumming nervously on the table. Lionel Claude, a doctor with a trembling hand and a whiskey glass never far from reach, avoids the topic of Rosaline altogether, his eyes glassy with drink or fear. Poirot isn't sure which. Then there's Rosaline herself, a delicate figure. In a sea of hostility, she's young, barely in her 20s, with porcelain skin and a soft Irish accent that trembles under scrutiny. Her hands fidget with her napkin, and her eyes dart to David Hunter, her brother, who sits beside her. David is a lean, intense man with dark eyes and a smile that's more threat than warmth. He watches the room like a predator, his hand resting possessively on Rosaline's arm. Poirot tries to draw her out, asking about her life in London before the war, but David interrupts, steering the conversation away with a laugh that doesn't reach his eyes. My sister's tired, he says, his tone final. Poirot's suspicions deepen. There's a dynamic here, a power imbalance that he doesn't yet understand. The dinner takes a dramatic turn when a servant announces an unexpected guest, a man named Enoch Arden, who has just checked into the Stag Inn. The name sends a ripple of unease through the room, though no one explains why. Poirot, ever observant, notes the way David's hand tightens on his glass, the way Frances's fork freezes midway to her mouth. Enoch Arden, he learns later, is a stranger to Warmsley Vale, a rough-looking man with a weathered face and a secretive manner. The barmaid at the inn whispers to Poirot that she saw Enoch speaking to David Hunter in a shadowed alley, their voices low and urgent. Poirot's mind races. The name Enoch Arden is no coincidence. It's a reference to it's a Tennyson poem about a man presumed dead who returns to disrupt the lives of those he left behind. Is this stranger a ghost from someone's past? A blackmailer? A conspirator? Poirot doesn't know, but he feels the weight of an approaching storm. The river outside roars, its waters rising with the promise of chaos. And Poirot senses that Enoch Arden's arrival is the spark that will ignite the powder keg of Warmsley Vale. As the dinner ends, Poirot lingers in the garden, the cool night air sharpening his thoughts. The Claude family is a tapestry of motives, greed, pride, desperation, and something darker, something hidden. Rosaline, with her nervous glances and guarded words, is at the center of it all, but Poirot suspects she's more pawn than player. David Hunter's protectiveness feels less like love and more like control. And Enoch Arden, the mysterious newcomer, is a wild card, his presence stirring fear in a family already on edge. Poirot lights a cigarette, not his usual habit, but a rare indulgence when his mind is restless. The river's roar fills the silence, and he imagines it sweeping away the village's secrets, exposing the truth beneath. He knows the flood is coming, and with it, a crime that will shake Warmsley Vale to its core. But is it a crime yet, too? Come, or one long forgotten, buried in the muddy depths of the past? Poirot's little gray cells hummed with anticipation. This is no holiday, it's a case. And he's already hooked. The mystery is just beginning to unfold, and Hercule Poirot is ready to chase every clue. What secrets does Enoch Arden bring, and how will they ripple through the Claude family? You're caught up in this tangled tale. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 2, where the flood begins to break. The morning after the tense dinner at Furrowbank, Hercule Poirot wakes to the sound of the river. Its relentless roar, a constant reminder of the unrest simmering in Warmsley Vale. The fog has thickened overnight, wrapping the village in a gray shroud that muffles sound and blurs the edges of reality. Poirot, ever meticulous, adjusts his tie in the mirror of his room at the Stag Inn, his mind already dissecting the events of the previous evening. The Claude family's resentment toward Rosaline, David Hunter's predatory vigilance, and the mysterious arrival of Enoch Arden have woven a tapestry of suspicion that Poirot cannot ignore. He senses that the threads of this mystery are tightening, pulling the village toward an inevitable confrontation. As he sips his morning tisane, the detective resolves to learn more about the stranger who has set everyone on edge. Enoch Arden, he muses, is no ordinary visitor. His name, his timing, his secrecy, all suggest a purpose that could unravel the fragile balance of Warmsley Vale. Poirot begins his day with a walk through the village, his polished shoes sinking slightly into the damp earth as he navigates the cobblestone paths. The river, swollen to near bursting, churns beside him, its muddy waters carrying debris from upstream broken branches, clumps of grass, and the occasional glint of something metallic lost to the current. The villagers go about their business, but their movements are cautious, their glances wary. At the post office, Poirot overhears two women whispering about Enoch Arden's arrival. "He's got no business here," one says, her voice sharp, with unease. "I saw him lurking by the church last night, talking to that Hunter fellow. Nothing good comes of strangers like him." The other nods, clutching her shawl tighter. "Looks like he's brought the flood with him," she murmurs. Poirot's mustache twitches. The flood, it seems, is not just a force of nature, but a symbol of the chaos this stranger represents. He makes a mental note to find Enoch Arden and uncover his intentions. At the Stag Inn, Poirot seeks out the barmaid, a plump woman named Elsie, who has a knack for gossip and an ear for every rumor in Warmsley Vale. Over a cup of tea, Elsie shares what she knows about Enoch Arden. "He checked in 2 nights ago," she says, wiping her hands on her apron. "Paid in cash, no luggage to speak of, just a worn satchel. Keeps to himself mostly, but I saw him slip out after dark, heading toward the river. And then there's that meeting with David Hunter sneaking about like thieves. They were." Elsie leans closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Some say he's a conman, here to swindle Rosalind. Others think he's someone from her past, come to stir trouble." Poirot listens intently, his little gray cells cataloging every detail. A conman? A figure from Rosalind's past? Or something else entirely? He thanks Elsie with a polite nod, and a coin slipped discreetly across the counter. Then sets out to track down the elusive Mr. Arden. Poirot's search leads him to the village square, where a small market is in full swing. Stalls sell apples, fresh-baked bread, and jars of homemade jam, but the atmosphere is subdued, the vendor's smiles forced. Poirot spots Lynn Marchmont, browsing a stall of knitted scarves, her face thoughtful, approaches, and she greets him with a wry smile. "Shh, you're sniffing out trouble, aren't you, Monsieur Poirot?" "Shh," she says, her tone teasing, but her eyes sharp. Poirot chuckles, admitting that trouble seems to find him. He steers the conversation toward Enoch Arden, probing gently. Lynn's expression darkens. "I don't trust him," she says. "He was at the inn last night, asking questions about Rosalind, where she came from, how she met Gordon. It felt wrong. Like he was digging for something." Poirot presses her for details, but Lynn shakes her head. "I don't know more. But Raleigh saw him too, near the riverbank. Said he looked like a man with a secret." Poirot's interest deepens. Raleigh, the stoic farmer, might have seen something crucial. He thanks Lynn and makes a mental note to speak with her fiancé. The day progresses, Poirot visits the local church. A stone building with stained glass windows that cast colorful patterns on the pews. The vicar, a kindly man with a nervous habit of adjusting his spectacles, confirms that Enoch Arden was seen near the churchyard the previous night. He seemed agitated, the vicar says, his voice trembling slightly. He was pacing by the old graves, muttering to himself. I thought he might be praying, but it didn't feel. Holy Poirot's eyes narrow. The churchyard, with its weathered tombstones and overgrown ivy, is an odd place for a stranger to linger. Is Arden searching for something or someone? The detective decides to inspect the churchyard himself, but before he can leave, the vicar adds, there's something else. I overheard him mention a name Underhay. Does that mean anything to you? Poirot's heart skips a beat. Underhay, the name strikes a chord, though he cannot place it. He files it away, knowing it's a piece of the puzzle he'll need later. By late afternoon, Poirot tracks down Raleigh Clode at his farm, on the outskirts of Warmsley Vale. The farm is a patchwork of muddy fields and sagging fences. Two Roleys struggle to keep it afloat without Gordon's promised wealth. Rowley is repairing a gate when Poirot arrives, his hands rough and his face etched with exhaustion. He's reluctant to talk, but Poirot's charm and persistence coax out a story. I saw that Arden fellow by the river, Raleigh says, wiping sweat from his brow. He was with David Hunter, and they weren't chatting about the weather. Looked like an argument. Arden was waving a letter, and David was red in the face. I didn't stick around to hear more. Poirot presses for details about the letter, but Raleigh shakes his head. Couldn't see it clearly, just paper folded up, but it had David rattled, that's for sure. Poirot's mind races. It's a letter, an argument, a stranger named Enoch Arden, and a whispered Namunderhay. The pieces are starting to form a picture, but it's still shrouded in fog. That evening, Poirot returns to Furrowbank for another dinner with the Clodes, hoping to observe more of their dynamics. The atmosphere is even tenser than before, the air thick with unspoken accusations. Frances Clode, her eyes flashing with barely concealed anger, makes pointed remarks about outsiders meddling in family affairs. Jeremy, her husband, tries to deflect with talk of the weather, but his hands tremble as he pours the wine. Lionel, the doctor, is already on his third whiskey, his face flushed and his words slurred. Rosaline sits quietly, her hands folded in her lap, but Poirot notices the way her eyes flicker toward the door, as if she expects someone to burst in. David Hunter, as always, hovers nearby, his presence a silent warning to anyone who gets too close. Poirot tries to engage Rosalind again, asking about her life in Ireland before she met Gordon. Her answers are vague, her voice barely above a whisper. It was a long time ago, she says, her fingers twisting her wedding ring. David cuts in, his tone sharp. Let's not bore Monsieur Poirot with old stories. Poirot smiles politely, but his mind is alight with suspicion. Rosaline is hiding something, and David is determined to keep it buried. As the dinner draws to a close, a servant delivers a message to David, who reads it and pales. He excuses himself abruptly, leaving Rosaline alone at the table. Poirot seizes the moment to approach her, speaking softly. Madame, if you are in trouble, you can trust Hercule Poirot. I am, how you say, discreet. Rosaline's eyes meet his, and for a moment he sees a flash of fear, of desperation. But before she can speak, David returns, his expression thunderous. Time to go, Rosaline, he says, steering her out of the room. Poirot watches them leave, his mind buzzing. The letter, the argument, the name Underhay, Rosaline's fearites, all connected. But how? Steps outside into the cool night air, the river's roar filling his ears. The flood is closer now, its waters threatening to spill over, and Poirot knows that Enoch Arden holds the key to what comes next. The mystery is deepening. And Hercule Poirot is hot on the trail. Who is Enoch Arden, and what does he want with Rosaline and David? Is the name Underhay a clue to a forgotten crime, or a warning of one to come? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your theories in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 3, where the flood's first waves begin to crash. The fog in Warmsley Vale clings to the morning like a stubborn ghost, its tendrils curling around the thatched roofs and seeping into the cracks of the village's secrets. Hercule Poirot stands at the window of his room at the Stag, in his sharp eyes scanning the misty landscape as the river's roar fills the air. The events of the previous night at Furrowbank linger in his mind, Rosalind's fleeting look of fear, David Hunter's abrupt departure, and the mysterious name Underhay that seems to haunt the edges of this puzzle. Poirot's little gray cells are restless, piecing together fragments of clues, Enoch Arden's secretive arrival, his heated exchange with David, the letter that rattled the Claude family's guard dog. The detective knows that the flood is no longer a distant threat. Its first waves are lapping at the village's foundations. He must act quickly to uncover the truth before it's swept away. Today, Poirot resolves to confront the enigma of Enoch Arden and unearth the significance of Underhay, a name that carries the weight of a buried past. Poirot begins his day with a visit to the village post office, a cramped building where gossip flows as freely as the river. The postmistress, a wiry woman named Mrs. Ledbetter, is known for her sharp memory and even sharper tongue. As Poirot inquires about recent visitors, she leans across the counter, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of sharing news. "That Enoch Arden," she says, her voice low. "He's been sending telegrams 3 in one day, all to London. Wouldn't let me see the contents, mind you. But he was in a right state, pacing and muttering." Poirot presses her gently, asking if she caught any names. Mrs. Ledbetter hesitates, then whispers, "I heard him say Underhay once, when he thought no one was listening. Sounded like he was talking about a ghost." Poirot's pulse quickens under Hayagana, name that seems to echo through Warmsley Vale like a warning. He thanks Mrs. Ledbetter with a charming smile and a promise to return, his mind already racing toward the next clue. The detective's next stop is the riverbank, where the waters churn with a ferocity that mirrors the village's unrest. The muddy path is littered with debris twigs, leaves, and a sodden glove that catches Poirot's eye. He bends to examine it, noting its fine leather and monogrammed initials. "Are you? Could it belong to Rosaline? Or someone else connected?" To the elusive Underhay. As he pockets the glove for later investigation, Poirot spots Lynn Marchmont walking along the path, her coat pulled tight against the damp air. She greets him with a nod, but her face is drawn, her usual spark dimmed. "You're chasing shadows, aren't you?" she says, half joking, but her voice betrays worry. Poirot seizes the opportunity to probe further, asking about Enoch Arden and the name Underhay. Lynn's eyes widen slightly and she hesitates before speaking. "Underhay. I heard that name years ago when I was a girl. It was something my mother mentioned. Man who vanished, connected to the Claudes somehow. But no one talks about him now. It's like he never existed." Poirot's mustache twitches. A man who vanished, a name erased from memory. This is no coincidence. He thanks Lynn and urges her to be cautious, sensing that her curiosity could draw her into danger. Determined to learn more, Poirot seeks out Roly Claude at his farm, hoping the farmer's blunt honesty will shed light on the mystery.
The farm
is a study in struggle, its fields waterlogged from the river's overflow, its barns sagging under years of neglect. Raleigh is hauling sacks of grain when Poirot arrives, his face etched with the strain of a man fighting to keep his livelihood afloat. Poirot wastes no time asking about Enoch Arden's meeting with David Hunter and the letter that sparked their argument. Raleigh wipes his brow, his eyes narrowing. "I didn't hear much," he admits, "but that letter, it was old, yellowed, like it had been kept for years. Arden was waving it in David's face, saying something about proof and the truth coming out. David looked like he wanted to strangle him." Poirot's mind leaps to the possibility of blackmail. Is Enoch Arden holding a secret over David's head? Does it involve Underhay, a man whose name seems to haunt the Claudes? Raleigh adds, "I don't trust David. He's got a temper and he's too close to Rosaline's money. If Arden's stirring trouble, he's playing a dangerous game." Poirot nods, filing away Raleigh's warning. The farmer's loyalty to his family is clear. But so is his frustration, a volatile mix that could ignite at any moment. By afternoon, Poirot decides to confront Enoch Arden directly. He finds the stranger at the Stag Inn, sitting alone in a corner of the bar, a glass of ale untouched before him. Arden is a rugged man, his face weathered by sun and hardship, his eyes darting like those of a hunted animal. Poirot approaches with his usual charm, introducing himself as a curious visitor. "Monsieur Arden," he says, his voice smooth. "I hear you are new to Warmsley Vale. May I ask what brings you here?" Arden's gaze hardens, but he forces a smile. "Just passing through," he says, his voice rough. "Business, you know." Poirot presses gently, mentioning the name Underhay. Arden's hand freezes on his glass, and for a moment his composure slips. "Never heard of him," he snaps, too quickly.
Ice.
Poirot smiles, unfazed. Curious, is it not, how names linger in a village like this? It's like ghosts. They refuse to stay. "Buried." Arden stands abruptly, muttering an excuse, and leaves the bar. Poirot watches him go, certain now that Arden is no mere traveler. He's a man with a purpose and a secret. That evening, Poirot attends another gathering at Furrowbank, where the Claude family's tensions are palpable. The dining room, with its faded grandeur, feels like a stage for a tragedy. Frances Claude, her elegance masking a steely resolve, speaks sharply of interlopers who threaten the family's legacy. Jeremy, her husband, is quieter, his eyes fixed on his plate, as if avoiding the storm brewing around him. Lionel, the doctor, is absent, reportedly called away on a medical emergency, but Poirot suspects he's drowning his nerves in whiskey elsewhere. Rosalind is present but silent, her pale face almost ghostly in the candlelight. David Hunter hovers as always, his eyes scanning the room for threats. Poirot observes a new dynamic. Rosalind seems more withdrawn, her hands trembling as she lifts. Her fork, and David's protectiveness, borders on aggression. When Poirot mentions Enoch Arden casually, the room falls silent. Frances's lips tighten, and David's hand clenches into a fist. "He's nobody," David says, his voice cold. "Just a drifter." But Poirot knows better. The mention of Arden has struck a nerve, and the name Underhay looms like a shadow over the table. As the evening winds down, Poirot steps into the garden to clear his mind. The river's roar is louder now, its waters lapping at the banks, threatening to spill over. He lights his cigarette, a rare indulgence for a man of his discipline, and lets his thoughts wander. The glove with the initials, "Are you?" The letter in Arden's hand? The whispered name Underhay, it all points to a past that refuses to stay buried. Is Underhay a man who disappeared, as Lynn suggested? Or something more? Husband, perhaps, whose absence left Rosaline free to marry Gordon. A blackmailer's victim? A ghost whose return threatens the Claude fortune? Poirot's little gray cells hum with possibilities. But one thing is clear. Enoch Arden is the key to unlocking this mystery, and his presence is pushing Warmsley Vale toward a breaking point. The flood is no longer a distant threat. Its waters are rising, and Poirot senses that a crime is imminent, or perhaps already committed. Hidden in the village's forgotten past, he stubs out his cigarette and returns to the inn, determined to uncover Arden's true identity before the river sweeps away the truth. The mystery is tightening its grip, and Hercule Poirot is ready to face the storm. What secrets does Enoch Arden hold, and how will they shatter the fragile peace of Warmsley Vale? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your guesses in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 4, where the flood's first victim emerges. The dawn breaks over Warmsley Vale with a deceptive calm, the fog thinning to reveal a sky heavy with the threat of rain. The river, now a churning beast, laps greedily at the banks, its waters muddy and relentless. Hercule Poirot stands at the edge of the Staggon's garden, his eyes fixed on the turbulent current, his mind racing with the clues that had begun to surface. The name Underhay, the glove marked "Are you?", Enoch Arden's secretive behavior, and the palpable fear and Rosaline's eyes all are pieces of a puzzle that grows more intricate by the hour. Last night's dinner at Furrowbank only deepened Poirot's conviction that the Claude family is teetering on the edge of catastrophe, and Enoch Arden's presence is the spark that could set it ablaze. Thighs. As the detective sips his morning tisane, a chill runs through him, not from the damp air, but from the certainty that the flood is no longer just a metaphor. Something dark is about to break, and Poirot must move swiftly to to prevent the truth from being swept away. The morning takes a grim turn when Poirot hears a commotion outside the inn. He steps onto the cobblestone street to find a small crowd gathered near the riverbank, their voices hushed but urgent. Elsie the barmaid spots him and hurries over, her face pale. "It's terrible, Monsieur Poirot," she says, her hands twisting her apron. "He found a body in the river, just beyond the bridge. It's Enoch Arden." Poirot's heart quickens, though his expression remains composed. The stranger, the man whose arrival stirred fear and suspicion, is dead. This is no coincidence, it's the flood's first victim. And Poirot knows it marks the beginning of the crime he's been anticipating. He joins the crowd, his sharp eyes taking in the scene. Enoch Arden's body lies sprawled on the muddy bank, his clothes sodden, his face bruised and bloodied. The local constable, a nervous young man named P.C. Hargreaves, is attempting to keep order, but the villagers' whispers are already spinning tales of accident, murder, and curses. Poirot examines the body from a distance, noting the deep gash on Arden's temple and the unnatural angle of his neck. "It's an accident, perhaps?" the constable suggests, but Poirot shakes his head. "Non, monsieur, this is no accident. The marks on his face, the force of the blow, these suggest violence. Deliberate and precise." The crowd murmurs, and Poirot catches fragments of their speculation. He was trouble from the start, probably crossed the wrong man. The river takes what it wants. Poirot's mind turns to David Hunter, whose heated argument with Arden was witnessed by Rowley. Could David's temper have boiled over? Or is there another player in this deadly game? Poirot requests to see Arden's belongings, and the constable leads him to a small satchel recovered from the body. Inside he finds a few coins, a battered notebook, and a folded letter yellowed with age, just as Raleigh described. Poirot pockets the letter discreetly, knowing it could hold the key to Arden's death. Back at the Stag Inn, Poirot retreats to his room to examine the letter. It's written in a hurried scrawl, addressed to no one in particular, and reads, "The truth about Underhay must come out. I have proof. Meet me at the river, midnight." The signature is illegible, but the mention of Underhay sends a jolt through Poirot. This letter confirms his suspicions. Enoch Arden was no drifter. He was here to expose a secret, one tied to the mysterious Underhay, and it cost him his life. Poirot's thoughts turn to Rosaline and David, the widow's fear, her brothers. Protectiveness, could they be linked to this truth Arden threatened to reveal? He resolves to confront David, but first he seeks out Lynn Marchmont, whose sharp mind and connection to the Clodes make her a valuable ally. Poirot finds Lynn at the village tea shop, her face drawn with shock at the news of Arden's death. "I knew he was trouble," she says, stirring her tea absently. "But murder, it's too much." Poirot probes gently, asking if she's heard anything more about Underhay. Lynn hesitates, her eyes flickering with unease. "There's an old family story," she says finally. "My mother used to talk about a man named Robert Underhay, a friend of Gordon's from years ago. He was married to a woman, an actress. I think he disappeared out in Africa or somewhere. Everyone assumed he was dead, but it was hushed up like it was something shameful." Poirot's mustache twitches. An actress, a disappearance, a connection to Gordon Claude. This is no mere coincidence. Could Rosaline be tied to Underhay's past, and did Arden's knowledge of this history lead to his death? Determined to uncover more, Poirot visits the local doctor, Lionel Claude, who has returned from his supposed emergency. Lionel's surgery is a cluttered room smelling of antiseptic and whiskey, and the man himself is a wreck, his hands trembling, his eyes bloodshot. Poirot asks about Arden's death, noting that Lionel was absent from the previous night's dinner. "I was called to a patient," Lionel mutters, avoiding Poirot's gaze. "Didn't hear about Arden until this morning." Poirot presses, mentioning the gash on Arden's head. "A medical opinion? Doctor, could such a wound be accidental?" Lionel's hands shake as he pours himself a drink. "Could be," he says, too quickly. "River's full of rocks. A fall could do it." But his nervousness betrays him, and Poirot suspects Lionel knows more than he's letting on. Did the doctor see something last night, or is his guilt tied to his own demons? That evening, Poirot seeks out David Hunter at Furrowbank, where the Claude family is reeling from the news of Arden's death. David is in the library, pacing like a caged animal, his face a mask of controlled fury. Poirot wastes no time, mentioning the argument Raleigh witnessed. A disagreement, nothing more. David snaps, his eyes flashing. Arden was a nobody, sticking his nose where it didn't belong. Poirot mentions the letter, watching David's reaction closely. The man's jaw tightens, but he recovers quickly. "No idea what you're talking about," he says, his voice cold. "If you're looking for a killer, try the river. It's dangerous this time of year." Poirot smiles, unruffled. "The river, monsieur, does not strike with such precision. But a man, perhaps, with a motive." David storms out, leaving Poirot alone with his thoughts. The detective is certain now. David is hiding something.
Oh.
And it's connected to Arden's death and the name Underhay. As night falls, Poirot walks along the riverbank, the floodwaters roaring beside him, the glove marked, "Are you?" the letter. Underhay's disappearance, Arden's murder, it all points to a secret buried in Roselyn's past. One that David is desperate to protect. The river's current seems to whisper its own warning, urging Poirot to dig deeper. He lights a cigarette, the smoke curling into the foggy air, and considers his next move. The flood has claimed its first victim, but Poirot knows it won't be the last unless he can unravel the truth. Is Rosaline the key to Underhay's mystery? Or is she another pawn in a deadly game? The detective stubs out his cigarette and heads back to the inn, his mind alight with determination. The storm is here, and Hercule Poirot will not let it sweep him away. The mystery grows darker, and Poirot is closing in on the truth. What does David Hunter know, and how far will he go to keep it hidden? Hit that like button, subscribe, and drop your theories in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 5, where the flood reveals another secret. The rain begins to fall in Warmsley Vale, a steady drizzle that turns the cobblestone streets slick and the river into a raging torrent. Hercule Poirot stands beneath the awning of the Stag Inn, his coat buttoned against the chill, his eyes fixed on the swollen waters that threaten to spill over the banks. The death of Enoch Arden has cast a pall over the village, and whispers of murder now mingle with the sound of the flood. Poirot's little gray cells are working tirelessly, weaving together the threads of the mystery. The letter found on Arden's body, the name Robert Underhay, the glove marked "Are you?" and David Hunter's barely concealed rage. The detective senses that the truth lies in Rosaline's past, a past she and David are desperate to keep buried. As the rain drums against the awning, Poirot resolves to uncover the story of Robert Underhay, the man whose name haunts Warmsley Vale like a ghost. The flood is rising, and with it, the stakes of this deadly puzzle. Poirot begins his day by revisiting the letter from Arden's satchel, now safely tucked in his pocket. The scrawled words, "The truth about Underhay must come out." I have. Proof burn in his mind, a taunt from a man who paid for his knowledge with his life. The mention of proof suggests evidence, perhaps hidden somewhere in the village or lost to the river. Poirot decides to search Arden's room at the Stag Inn, hoping for clues the constable might have missed. With Elsie's reluctant permission, he enters the sparse chamber, its single window overlooking the churning river. The room is stark: a narrow bed, a rickety chair, a small table littered with cigarette butts. Poirot's meticulous search yields little at first, but under the mattress, he finds a crumpled photograph, its edges worn. It shows a man in his 30s, lean and serious, standing beside a woman whose face is partially torn away. On the back, in faded ink, is written R and E, Cape Town, 1938. Poirot's pulse quickens. Could R be Robert Underhay? And E for Enoch Arden, or someone else? The photograph is another piece of the puzzle, but it raises more questions than answers. Determined to learn more about Underhay, Poirot visits the village library, a musty building crammed with books and old newspapers. The librarian, a frail woman named Miss Pritchard, greets him with a curious glance. Poirot explains he's researching local history, casually mentioning Robert Underhay. Miss Pritchard's eyes widen, and she hesitates before speaking. Underhay. That's a name I haven't heard in years, she says, her voice low. He was a friend of Gordon Claude's back in the day. Military man, I think, married to an actress. They lived in London, but there was talk of scandal. Then he vanished out in Africa during the war. Everyone said he was dead. Poirot probes further, asking about the actress. Miss Pritchard frowns. Her name was Eileen. I believe flighty sort, always on the stage. After Underhay disappeared, she dropped out of sight too. Odd business, all of it. Poirot's mind races. Eileen, could she be the E in the photograph? And is Rosalind, with her Irish accent and nervous demeanor, somehow connected to this vanished couple? Leaving the library, Poirot walks to the churchyard, where the vicar had seen Arden pacing among the graves. The rain has turned the ground to mud, and Poirot's shoes sink as he examines the tombstones. Most are weathered, their inscriptions barely legible. But one catches his eye, a small marker, half hidden by ivy, inscribed with the name Eileen Corrigan. 1915, 1940. The dates don't align with Rosalind's age, but the name Eileen echoes Miss Pritchard's story. Could this be Underhay's wife, or another clue in the tangled web? Poirot makes a note to investigate Corrigan, sensing that the churchyard holds more secrets than it reveals. As he leaves, he notices a fresh bouquet of flowers on the grave, their petals wilting in the rain. Someone in Warmsley Vale is still mourning or hiding something by afternoon. Poirot seeks out Frances Claude, whose sharp tongue and keen intelligence make her a potential source of insight. He finds her at Furrowbank, tending to a rose garden despite the drizzle. Frances greets him with a cool smile, her hands deftly pruning thorns. "You're persistent, Monsieur Poirot," she says, her eyes assessing him. "What do you want?" Now Poirot mentions Underhay, watching her reaction closely. Frances's hand pauses, a thorn pricking her finger, but she recovers quickly. "Robert Underhay? He was Gordon's friend, ages ago. Paid the price." "Why do you care?" Poirot presses, asking about Underhay's disappearance. Frances shrugs, but her voice is tight. "He went off to Africa, got himself killed, or so they said. Wife was a nobody and actress, with more ambition than talent. Good riddance to both." Her dismissal is too sharp, and Poirot senses she knows more. He mentions the photograph, describing the man and woman. Frances's face pales, but she waves him off. "Old ghosts don't interest me," she says, turning back to her roses. Poirot leaves, certain that Frances is hiding a piece of the truth. That evening, Poirot attends a village meeting at the town hall, where the Claudes and other locals discuss the rising flood. The room buzzes with tension, Arden's death fresh. In everyone's minds, Rosaline is absent, but David Hunter is there, his presence commanding attention. Poirot observes him, noting the way his eyes dart to the door, as if expecting trouble. During a break, Poirot approaches David, mentioning the photograph and Underhay's name. David's reaction is explosive. "You're meddling in things." "You don't understand," he snarls, his voice low but venomous. "Underhay's dead, and Arden was a liar. Keep your nose out of it, or you'll regret it." He storms off, leaving Poirot unfazed but intrigued. David's anger confirms his fear of Underhay's legacy, but why? Is he protecting Rose Eleanor himself? As the meeting ends, Poirot slips out to the riverbank, where the floodwaters are now lapping at the village's edges. The rain has stopped, but the air is heavy, the river's roar a constant threat. He pulls out the photograph again, studying the man's face. Could this be Robert Underhay, presumed dead, but somehow tied to Arden's murder? And the woman Eileen, Rosalind, or another figure in this deadly drama? The glove marked, "Are you?" weighs heavy in his pocket, its initials a taunt. Poirot's thoughts turn to Rosaline, whose fear at Furrowbank seemed genuine. Is she a victim of David's control, or a player in a scheme that led to Arden's death? The detective lights a cigarette, the smoke curling into the damp air, and lets his little gray cells work. The flood has claimed Enoch Arden, but Poirot knows it's only the beginning. Underhay's ghost is stirring, and with it, truth that could drown Warmsley Vale. The mystery is closing in, and Hercule Poirot is relentless. What connects Rosalind to Underhay, and who else will the flood claim? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 6, where the river yields another clue. The rain has returned to Warmsley Vale, a relentless downpour that hammers the rooftops and swells the river to a roaring fury. Hercule Poirot stands at the window of the Stag, and his reflection blurred in the rain-streaked glass. His mind consumed by the deepening mystery, Enoch Arden's murder has shaken the village, and the specter of Robert Underhay looms larger with every clue. The photograph of a man and a torn-faced woman. The glove-marked R.U., the name Eileen Corrigan on a forgotten grave, and David. Hunter's volatile reaction to Poirot's probing. The detective's little gray cells hum with the certainty that Rosaline Claude holds the key to this puzzle. Her fear and fragility masking a past that someone, perhaps David, is desperate to keep submerged. As the floodwaters creep closer to the village, Poirot knows he must act swiftly to uncover the river's secrets before they claim another victim. Today, he resolves to confront Rosaline and follow the trail of Underhay's ghost to its source. Poirot begins his day by revisiting the photograph found in Arden's room, its faded image haunting him. The man leans serious, with a military bearing, could be Robert Underhay, and the woman, her face partially torn away, might be Eileen, the actress who vanished with him. The inscription, R and E, Cape Town, 1938, suggests a connection to Africa, where Underhay reportedly disappeared. Poirot decides to seek out Jeremy Claude, the family solicitor, whose legal expertise and long history with the Claudes might shed light on Underhay's past. He finds Jeremy at his office in the village, a cluttered room filled with dusty files and the faint smell of ink. Jeremy greets Poirot with a weary nod, his face lined with the strain of his family's financial ruin. "Monsieur Poirot, you're stirring up old ghosts," he says, adjusting his glasses. Poirot mentions Underhay, watching Jeremy's reaction. Closely, the solicitor's hand pauses on a stack of papers and he sighs. Robert Underhay was a friend of Gordon's, a decent chap but reckless. He married an actress, Eileen Corrigan, her stage name. They were in London, then he went off to Africa during the war. Never came back. Dead, most likely. Poirot presses, asking about Eileen. Jeremy's eyes flicker with unease. She was trouble-ambitious, manipulative. After Robert vanished, she disappeared too. Good riddance. Poirot senses Jeremy is holding back, but the solicitor clams up, claiming he has work to do. The detective leaves, convinced that Eileen's story is central to the mystery. Next, Poirot visits the riverbank, where the flood has transformed the landscape. The bridge is half submerged, and the path is a quagmire of mud. As he walks, Poirot notices something glinting in the shallows, a small silver cigarette case, half buried in the silt. He retrieves it carefully, noting the engraved initials. "Are you the same as the glove?" Inside, he finds a single, waterlogged cigarette and a scrap of paper with the words Cape Town scrawled in faded ink. Poirot's pulse quickens. The cigarette case is another link to Underhay, and its presence in the river suggests someone tried to dispose of it. Was it Arden's or someone else's attempt to erase evidence? Poirot pockets the case, his mind turning to Rosaline. Initials are U. Could stand for Robert Underhay, Rosalind Underhay, if she was once married to the missing man. The possibility sends a chill through him. Is Rosaline's marriage to Gordon Claude a fraud built on a lie that Arden threatened to expose? Determined to speak with Rosaline, Poirot heads to Furrowbank, where she and David have been staying. The estate looms through the rain, its grandeur faded by neglect. A servant informs him that Rosaline is unwell and not receiving visitors. But Poirot's persistence earns him an audience in the drawing room. Rosaline sits by the fire, a shawl draped over her shoulders, her face pale and her eyes red-rimmed. David is absent, a rare opportunity for Poirot to speak with her alone. "Madame," he says gently, "I wish only to help. The death of Monsieur Ardan, the name Underhay, these things trouble you none." Rosaline's hands tremble, and she glances at the door as if fearing David's return. "I don't know anything," she whispers, her Irish accent thick with fear. "Please leave it alone." Poirot shows her the cigarette case, watching. Her reaction. Her eyes widen, and she gasps, but she recovers quickly. "I've never seen it," she says too quickly. Poirot presses, mentioning Eileen Corrigan. Rosaline's face crumples, and she buries her head in her hands. "At it," she pleads. I can't talk about it." Before Poirot can push further, David bursts in, his face thunderous. "What the hell are you doing?" he snarls, pulling Rosaline to her feet. "Get out, Poirot, or I'll throw you out." Poirot leaves, but not before noting Rosaline's terror. She knows something about underhand. David will stop at nothing to keep her silent. That afternoon, Poirot seeks out Lynn Marchmont, hoping her connection to the Clodes can clarify Rosaline's past. He finds her at Rowley's farm, helping with chores despite the rain. Lynn's face is grim, the news of Arden's death weighing heavily. "This village is cursed," she says, shoving a bale of hay into the barn. Poirot asks about Rosaline's life before Gordon. Lynn frowns, thinking back. "She came out of nowhere," she says. "Gordon met her in London, married her in a hurry. No one knew her history, just that she was Irish, worked as a typist or something. But there was talk. Someone said she'd been on the stage years ago. Could have been a mistake, though." Poirot's mind leaps to Eileen Corrigan, the actress married to Underhay. Could Rosaline and Eileen be the same person, hiding behind a new identity? He thanks Lynn and urges her to stay vigilant, sensing that her curiosity could put her in danger. By evening, Poirot attends a tense gathering at the village pub, where locals drown their fears in ale. The flood has cut off the main road, isolating Warmsley Vale, and Arden's murder has everyone on edge. Poirot overhears a conversation between two farmers, one mentioning a rumor that Underhay might not be dead. Heard he was seen in London. "Years after Africa," the man says, lowering his voice. "Could be Arden was him, come back to settle scores." The other scoffs, but Poirot's ears prick up. Underhay alive? It would explain Arden's proof and David's panic. Approaches the farmers, charming them into sharing more, but they clam up, spooked by his questions. As Poirot leaves the pub, he notices Lionel Clode staggering in the rain, his face flushed with drink. Poirot tries to engage him, but Lionel mutters incoherently about ghosts and debts before stumbling away. The doctor's unraveling, and Poirot wonders if his guilt is tied to Arden's death. Thorinder's past as night falls. Poirot walks to the river, the rain soaking his coat. The cigarette case, the photograph, Rosaline's fear. The rumor of Underhay's survival at all points to a conspiracy rooted in a forgotten crime. Was Underhay Rosaline's first husband, presumed dead but alive, threatening her inheritance? Did Arden know the truth? And was he killed to silence him? The river roars, its waters now spilling over the banks, flooding fields and threatening homes. Poirot lights a cigarette, the flame flickering in the wind, and lets his little gray cells work. The flood is no longer a threat, Tits here exposing the village's secrets. But whose secret drove a killer to strike, and who will be next? The detective stubs out his cigarette and heads back to the inn, his resolve unbroken. The river has spoken, and Hercule Poirot will follow its trail. The mystery is unraveling, and Poirot is closer to the truth. Will Rosaline break her silence, or will David's control keep the past buried? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your guesses in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 7, where the flood claims another soul. The floodwaters have breached the banks of Warmsley Vale, turning the village into a sodden maze of mud and misery. The river, now a relentless force, has swept away fences, flooded cellars, and cut off the last road out of town, trapping the villagers in a cauldron of fear and suspicion. Hercule Poirot stands at the edge of the Stagons' garden, his umbrella barely shielding him from the torrential rain. His eyes fixed on the churning waters that seem to mock his efforts to unravel the truth. Knock Arden's murder, the cigarette. Case marked RU, the photograph from Cape Town, and the haunting name of Robert Underhay have woven a web of intrigue that tightens around Rosaline Clode and her brother, David Hunter. Poirot's little gray cells are alight with the certainty that Rosaline's past holds the key to Arden's death. But the flood is erasing clues faster than he can find them. As the rain pounds the earth, Poirot senses that Warmsley Vale is at a breaking point, and another tragedy is imminent unless he can pierce the veil of secrets. Today he resolves to push Rosaline to reveal the truth about Underhay, confront David's lies, and uncover the killer before the river claims another. Hercule Poirot begins his day by returning to the cigarette case. Silver surface tarnished by mud but gleaming with significance. The initials are U, and the scrawled note Cape Town inside suggests a connection to Robert Underhay, the man who vanished in Africa, and possibly to Rosaline herself. The detective's mind churns with possibilities. Was Rosaline once married to Underhay? Her marriage to Gordon Claude, a fraud built on a lie. Did Enoch Arden know this? And was his proof a threat to her inheritance? Poirot decides to revisit Furrowbank, determined to speak with Rosaline alone, away from David's watchful eyes. The estate is a fortress of gloom, its windows shuttered against the storm, its halls echoing with the drip of leaking roofs. The servant who answers the door hesitates, but allows Poirot inside, warning him that Rosaline is fragile and David is in a foul mood. Poirot finds Rosaline in the library, curled in an armchair by a dying fire, her face pale and her hands clutching a handkerchief. Madame Poirot says softly, his voice warm but firm, "The time for silence is over. The death of Enoch Arden, the name Underhay's are not accidents. You know something, and I beg you to trust Hercule Poirot." Rosaline's eyes fill with tears, and she shakes her head. "I can't," she whispers, her voice breaking. "David, he'll never forgive me." Before Poirot can press further, David storms in, his face a mask of fury. "Get out, Poirot," he snarls, grabbing Rosaline's arm. "You're upsetting her." Poirot stands his ground, his eyes locking with David's. "Monsieur, it is not I who upsets her, it is the truth you fear." David's hand twitches as if tempted to strike, but he pulls Rosaline away, leaving Poirot with more questions than answers. Frustrated but undeterred, Poirot seeks out Lynn Marchmont, whose sharp mind and growing unease make her a vital ally. He finds her at the village hall, helping distribute sandbags to protect against the flood. The hall is a hive of activity, with villagers hauling supplies and exchanging worried glances. Lynn's face is streaked with mud, her expression grim. "This flood's tearing us apart," she says, pausing to catch her breath. "And Arden's murder, it's like a curse." Poirot asks about Rosaline's past, probing for any link to Eileen Corrigan or Underhay. Lynn frowns, wiping rain from her eyes. "I've been thinking about what you said," she admits. "There's something I didn't mention. Years ago, when I was a teenager, I overheard Gordon talking to Jeremy about a woman an actress who'd caused trouble for Underhay. They didn't say her name, but Gordon was angry, said she'd ruin a good man. I always assumed it was Eileen, but now, wonder if it was Rosaline. She's Irish, like Eileen was supposed to be, and there's something about her that doesn't add up." Poirot's pulse quickens. The pieces are aligning. Rosaline as Eileen, married to Underhay, disappearing after his supposed death, only to reappear as Gordon's wife. But why? And how does David fit into this deception? Poirot's next stop is the local police station, a small building nearly swamped by the rising waters. P.C. Hargreaves, the constable, is overwhelmed, juggling flood reports and Arden's murder investigation. Poirot shares the cigarette case and photograph, asking if Arden's body yielded other clues. Hargreaves produces a small evidence bag containing a soaked notebook, its pages barely legible. Poirot examines it, deciphering fragments. Underhay. "Alive, proof in London, Rosaline knows." The words confirm Arden's mission to expose Underhay's survival and Rosaline's secret. Hargreaves mentions a witness, a fisherman who saw a figure near the river the night Arden died. Wearing a dark coat like David's, Poirot's suspicions deepen, but he cautions the constable against hasty conclusions. "A coat is not a man," he says, "but it is a clue." He leaves the station, determined to find the fisherman and verify the sighting. By afternoon, Poirot tracks down the fisherman, an old man named Tom Willis, at his cottage by the river. The cottage is half flooded, its furniture piled on tables to escape the water. Tom, his hands gnarled from years of casting nets, confirms he saw a man in a dark coat arguing with Arden near the bridge. Couldn't hear much over the river. He says, his voice raspy, but the man was angry, shoving Arden, waving something paper maybe. Then they were gone, and I went home. Poirot shows him the cigarette case, asking if he'd seen it before. Tom squints, then nods. Looks like one I saw Rosaline drop months ago by the church. Thought it was odd she didn't seem the smoking type. Poirot's mind races. The case belongs to Rosaline, marked with Underhay's initials. Is she Eileen, hiding her past as Underhay's wife? And did David kill Arden to protect her secret? That evening, Poirot attends a tense gathering at the church, where the vicar has organized a prayer service for the flood's victims. The pews are filled with anxious faces, the air heavy with the scent of damp wool and candle wax. Rosaline is there, sitting alone, her face hidden by a scarf. David is absent, and Poirot seizes the chance to approach her again. He speaks softly, showing her the notebook fragment. Madame, Enoch Arden died for this truth. Is he alive? And are you his wife? Rosaline's hands tremble, and she whispers, He's gone. He's supposed to be gone. Before she can say more, Frances Claude interrupts, her eyes blazing. Leave her alone, Poirot, she hisses. You're making things worse. Poirot retreats, but not before noting Frances's protectiveness. Is she shielding Roselinor her own secrets? As the service ends, Poirot steps outside, the rain now a deluge. The river has flooded the churchyard, exposing old graves and scattering debris. Among the mud, Poirot spots a Glinta locket, half buried, with a faded photograph inside. Young Rosaline beside a man who matches the one in Arden's photo. The locket's clasp is engraved, To Eileen from R.U. Poirot's heart pounds. Rosaline is Eileen Corrigan, Underhay's wife, and her marriage to Gordon may be invalid. Arden's proof threatened to unravel her fortune, and someone David, perhaps killed to keep it hidden. The flood is relentless, washing away the village's secrets, but Poirot is undeterred. He pockets the locket, his resolve hardening. The breaking point is here, and the truth is within reach. The mystery is spiraling toward a climax, and Poirot is closing in. Will Rosaline confess, or will the flood claim another life? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your theories. In the comments below, stay tuned for Chapter 8, where the past comes crashing into the present. The flood has transformed Warmsley Vale into a besieged outpost. Its streets now rivers of mud, its homes battered by the relentless downpour. The river, swollen beyond its banks, roars with a primal fury, as if determined to wash away every secret the village holds. Hercule Poirot stands beneath the sagging eaves of the Stag in his umbrella, a feeble shield against the storm. His mind ablaze with the revelations of the previous day. The locket found in the churchyard, inscribed with To Eileen from R.U., containing a photograph of a young Rosaline beside a man who matches Robert Underhay, has confirmed Poirot's suspicions. Rosaline is Eileen Corrigan, Underhay's wife, and her marriage to Gordon Claude may be a fraud. Enoch Arden's murder, the cigarette case, the Cape Town photograph, and the whispered rumors of Underhay's survival all point to a conspiracy that threatens the Claude family's fragile stability. David Hunter's aggression, Rosaline's terror, the growing unrest among the Claudes suggests that the flood is not just a natural disaster, but a catalyst for a reckoning. Poirot's little gray cells hum with urgency. The locket is the key to unlocking the truth, but the river's wrath and a killer's desperation stand in his way. Today, he resolves to confront the Claudes, unravel Rosaline's past, and stop the flood from claiming another life. Poirot begins his morning by examining the locket again, its delicate silver chain tarnished but intact.
The photograph inside
is unmistakable. Rosaline, younger and radiant, stands beside a man whose serious eyes and military posture scream Robert Underhay. The inscription To Eileen from R.U. is a damning clue linking Rosaline to Underhay's vanished wife. Poirot's mind races through the implications. If Rosaline is Eileen and Underhay is alive, her marriage to Gordon Claude is invalid, nullifying her claim to his fortune. Enoch Arden's proof likely threatened to expose this, making him a target. But who killed him? David protecting his sister's wealth? Claude, desperate to reclaim the inheritance? Or someone else? lurking in the shadows of this drowning village. Poirot pockets the locket and heads to Furrowbank, determined to confront Rosaline and force the truth into the open. The estate is a fortress under siege, its grounds flooded, its windows rattling in the wind. Poirot finds Rosaline in the conservatory, a glass-walled room where rain streaks blur the outside world. She's alone, her face pale, her hands twisting a damp handkerchief. "At bottom," Poirot says, his voice gentle but firm, "the locket tells a story you cannot hide. You are Eileen Corrigan, are you not? And Robert Underhay was your husband." Rosaline's eyes widen, and she collapses into a chair, sobbing. "Shh, I didn't mean for any of this," she whispers, her Irish accent thick with despair. "Robert, he was supposed to be dead. He went to Africa, and I never heard from him again. Then Gordon came, and I thought I could start over." Poirot listens, his heart softening but his mind sharp. "And Enoch Arden?" he asks. "What? Did he know?" Rosaline shakes her head, tears streaming. "He said Robert was alive, that he had proof. He wanted money, lots of it. I told David, and he got so angry." Before she can say more, David bursts in, his face a storm of rage. "You doing to her?" he shouts, grabbing Poirot's arm. "Get out, or I'll make you regret it." Poirot stands his ground, his eyes cold. "Monsieur, it is you who will regret if the truth remains buried. The locket speaks, and so will the river." David releases him, his hands shaking, and ushers Rosaline out, leaving Poirot with a chilling certainty. David knows more about Arden's death than he admits, determined to dig deeper. Poirot seeks out Frances Claude, whose sharp intellect and guarded demeanor suggests she's hiding a piece of the puzzle. He finds her at the village hall, organizing relief efforts for flood victims. The hall is chaotic, with volunteers stacking sandbags and distributing blankets, their faces etched with exhaustion. Frances, her elegant coat splattered with mud, greets Poirot with a raised eyebrow. "You're relentless, monsieur," she says, her voice cool. Poirot shows her the locket, watching her reaction. Her eyes flicker with recognition, but she masks it quickly. "Pretty trinket," she says, shrugging. "What's it to me?" Poirot presses, mentioning Eileen Corrigan and Underhay. Frances's composure cracks, and she pulls him aside. "All right," she hisses, her voice low. "I knew Eileen. She was a schemer, always chasing money. Robert married her, and it ruined him. When he disappeared, we all thought she'd run off with another man. If Rosaline's Eileen, she's playing a dangerous game." Poirot senses Frances knows more, but is protecting her family or herself. He thanks her and leaves his suspicions growing. Is Frances shielding Rosaline, or does she have her own motives? By afternoon, Poirot visits the riverbank, where the flood has unearthed more than mud. Villagers are salvaging debris furniture, tools, and personal belongings swept away by the current. Among them is Lynn Marchmont, her boots sinking into the mire as she helps a neighbor. Poirot pulls her aside, showing her the locket. Lynn's eyes widen. "That's Rosaline," she says, confirming the photograph. "But who's the man?" Poirot shares his theory. Robert Underhay, alive, threatening Rosaline's inheritance. Lynn's face darkens. If that's true, David's in deep. He's obsessed with keeping Rosaline's money and Rowley. He's been acting strange, too. Keeps talking about fixing things for the family. Poirot's pulse quickens. Rowley, with his quiet strength and simmering resentment, could be a dark horse in this mystery. He resolves to confront the farmer, but first he examines the riverbank for more clues. Near the bridge, he finds a torn piece of fabric, dark and sodden, matching the coat Tom Willis saw the night of Arden's murder. It's another thread tying David or someone else to the crime. Poirot tracks down Rowley at his farm, now half submerged. Its fields a lake of mud. Rowley is repairing a broken fence, his face grim, his hands raw from work. Poirot shows him the fabric, asking about the night Arden died. Rowley's jaw tightens. "I told you what I saw," he says, his voice low. David and Arden arguing. "I didn't stick around." Poirot mentions Underhay, watching Rowley's reaction. The farmer's eyes flicker, and he hesitates. "Heard the name," he admits. Gordon used to talk about him, a friend who got mixed up with the wrong woman. If Rosalind's that woman, she's cheated us all. Poirot senses Rolly's anger, a slow-burning fuse that could explode. He warns Rolly to stay out of trouble. But the farmer's silence is ominous. That evening, Poirot attends a tense meeting at the pub, where villagers gather to discuss the flood and Arden's murder. The air is thick with fear and rumors swirl. Underhay alive? Rosaline a fraud? David a killer? Poirot listens, noting Lionel Claude's absence. He seeks out the doctor at his surgery, finding him slumped over a bottle of whiskey. "Leave me alone," Lionel slurs. But Poirot presses, mentioning the locket and Underhay. Lionel's eyes fill with tears. "I knew her," he mumbled. "Eileen. She came to me once years ago asking for help. Said Robert was alive, hiding. I didn't believe her." Poirot's heart races. Lionel's confession confirms Rosalind's identity, but his drunken state makes him unreliable. Did he see something the night Arden died, or is his guilt tied to an older sin? As night falls, Poirot returns to the river, the floodwaters now. Lapping at the village's heart. The locket, the photograph. Rosaline's confession at all points to a crime rooted in a fraudulent marriage and a man who refused to stay dead. David's rage, Rolly's resentment, Francis's secrets, Lionel's guilt each is a thread in a deadly tapestry. Poirot lights a cigarette, the flame flickering in the wind, and lets his little gray cells work. The flood is exposing the truth, but the killer is still at large, and Rosaline's life may be next. The detective stubs out his cigarette, his resolve unshaken. The locket has spoken, and Hercule Poirot will not rest until the river's secrets are laid bare. The mystery is at its peak, and Poirot is relentless. Who killed Enoch Arden, and what will the flood reveal next? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your theories in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 9, where the truth begins to surface. The flood has tightened its grip on Warmsley Vale. It's transforming the village into a waterlogged labyrinth where every street is a stream and every home a fragile refuge. The river roars with a vengeance, its muddy waters swallowing fields, gardens, and the last remnants of the village's tranquility. Hercule Poirot stands on the steps of the Stag in his coat soaked despite his umbrella, his sharp eyes scanning the deluge for answers. The locket's revelation that Rosalind Claude is Eileen Corrigan, once married to Robert Underhay, has turned the mystery on its head. Enoch Arden's murder, the cigarette case marked "Are You?" the Cape Town photograph, and Rosaline's tearful confession point to a conspiracy rooted in a fraudulent marriage and a fortune built on lies. David Hunter's rage, Rolly Claude's simmering resentment. Francis's guarded secrets and Lionel's drunken guilt form a deadly web, and Poirot knows the killer is among them. The flood is stripping away the village's defenses, exposing truths long buried, but time is running out. Today Poirot resolves to confront the Claudes as a group, force the truth into the open, and unmask the murderer before the river claims another life. Poirot begins his day by revisiting the evidence, laying out the locket, the cigarette case, the photograph, and Arden's notebook on his in-room table. Each item tells a story. The locket confirms Rosalind's identity as Eileen. The cigarette case ties her to Underhay, the photograph places them in Cape Town, and the notebook's fragments Underhay. Alive, Rosaline knows suggest Arden was blackmailing her with proof of Underhay's survival. Poirot's mind churns with the implications. If Underhay is alive, Rosaline's marriage to Gordon Claude is invalid, and the Claude family would inherit his fortune. Arden's death was no accident, was a desperate act to protect a secret worth millions. But who struck the fatal blow? David, guarding his sister's wealth, Raleigh driven by family loyalty, or another Claude, hiding in plain sight? Poirot decides to gather the family at Furrowbank for a confrontation. Knowing the truth will surface only under pressure, he sends a note to Francis Claude, requesting an urgent meeting with the entire family, citing matters of grave importance. The rain is relentless as Poirot trudges to Furrowbank. The estate now a sodden fortress, its grounds a quagmire of mud and debris. The family gathers in the drawing room, their faces a mix of suspicion and dread. Frances sits ramrod straight, her eyes sharp. Jeremy, her husband, fidgets with his cufflinks. Lionel, the doctor, is pale and unsteady, his hands trembling from drink. Raleigh stands by the window, his broad frame tense. Rosalind huddles in a corner, her face hidden by a scarf. And David looms beside her, his eyes blazing with defiance. Poirot begins, his voice calm but commanding. Mies Amos, a crime has been committed in Warmsley Vale, and its roots lie in a secret you all share. Robert Underhay is the key, and Rosalind Ealing Corrigan knows the truth. The room erupts in gasps and protests, but Poirot holds up the locket, silencing them. This proves Rosaline was Underhay's wife. If he lives, her marriage to Gordon is void, and the Claude fortune is yours. Enoch Arden died to keep this secret or to reveal it. Rosaline sobs, and David steps forward, his fists clenched. You're talking nonsense, Poirot, he snarls. Underhay's dead, and Arden was a liar. But Poirot is relentless. Producing the cigarette case and photograph. These tell a different story, Monsieur Hunter. And this, he holds up the notebook fragment, says Rosaline knows Underhay is alive. Rosaline's cry cuts through the room. I didn't know, she wails. Enoch came to me, said Robert was in London, that he had proof. I didn't believe him, but David, he said he'd handle it. David's face darkens, and he lunges toward Poirot, but Raleigh grabs his arm, his own anger flaring. Handle it how, Raleigh demands? By killing him? The room descends into chaos, accusations flying, until Frances stands, her voice cutting through like a blade. Enough. This is tearing us apart. Poirot, if you have proof, show it. Otherwise, leave us be. Poirot seizes the moment, laying out his theory. Underhay disappeared in Africa, presumed dead. Rosaline, as Eileen, remarried Gordon Claude, claiming his fortune. But Arden knew Underhay was alive and threatened to expose her. Someone, perhaps Monsieur Hunter, met Arden at the river and silenced him forever. David laughs, a harsh, bitter sound. You'd think I'd kill for her. Prove it, detective. Poirot's eyes narrow. The fabric found at the river matches your coat, monsieur. And the fisherman saw you arguing with Arden. David pales, but before he can respond, Lionel stumbles forward, his voice slurred. It wasn't David, he mumbles. I saw something that night. By the river. It wasn't David. The room freezes, and Poirot's heart races. Lionel's confession could break the case, but his drunken state makes him unreliable. What did you see, Doctor? Poirot asks. Lionel shakes his head, collapsing into a chair. I can't. It's too much. Frustrated, Poirot leaves Furrowbank and heads to the village, seeking Lynn Marchmont for clarity. He finds her at the tea shop, her face drawn with worry. The flood has worsened, and news of the confrontation has spread. They're falling. Apart, Lynn says, stirring her tea. Rolly's furious, says he'll do anything to save the family. I'm scared he means it. Poirot shows her the locket, confirming Rosaline's identity. Lynn's eyes widen. So it's true she's Eileen? But why kill Arden? If Underhay's alive, the Claudes get everything. Poirot nods. Precisely. But someone wanted the secret kept, someone with more to lose than money. He asks about Lionel's behavior, and Lynn frowns. He's been drinking more since. Arden died. Said something odd yesterday about fixing a mistake from years ago. I thought he meant his debts, but now Rose's mind races. Lionel's guilt, his cryptic words, could he have killed Arden? Not for money, but to hide an older sin. By evening, Poirot visits the river bank. Now a raging torrent that has swept away the bridge. The flood has unearthed more debris, and among it, Poirot finds a sodden letter, its ink blurred but legible. Eileen, I'm alive. Meet me in London. Are you? The letter is a bombshell proof that Underhay survived, and Rosaline knew. Poirot's thoughts turned to Lionel, whose drunken confession suggested he saw the killer. Was it Rowley? Driven by family loyalty? Was Frances? Protecting her status? Or David, despite Lionel's claim? The detective lights a cigarette, the flame flickering in the rain, and lets his little gray cells work. The flood is relentless, exposing the village's darkest truths, but the killer is still at large. Poirot stubs out his cigarette, his resolve unshaken. The truth is surfacing, and he will drag it into the light, no matter the cost. The mystery is reaching its climax, and Poirot is on the verge of unmasking the killer. Who struck down Anina Garden, and what will the flood reveal next? Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your guesses in the comments below. Stay tuned for Chapter 10, where the final truth is revealed. The flood has reached its peak in Warmsley Vale, transforming the village into a sodden battlefield where the river reigns supreme. Streets are submerged, homes are abandoned, and the air is thick with the stench of mud and decay. The relentless rain pounds the rooftops, and the river's roar drowns out all but the most desperate cries. Hercule Poirot stands at the edge of the village square, his umbrella useless against the deluge, his sharp eyes scanning the chaos for the final pieces of the puzzle. The locket, the cigarette case, the Cape Town photograph, the notebook fragments, and the sodden letter signed, "Are You?" have confirmed Rosaline Claude as Eileen Corrigan, once married to Robert Underhay, whose survival threatens her claim to Gordon Claude's fortune. Enoch Arden's murder was no random act. It was a desperate bid to keep Underhay's existence a secret. David Hunter's rage, Rolly Claude's resentment, Francis's guarded demeanor, and Lionel's drunken guilt all point to a killer among the Claudes. But Poirot's little gray cells are still piecing together the motive and the moment of truth. The flood has stripped Warmsley Vale bare, exposing its darkest secrets. And Poirot knows the time has come to confront the murderer. As the river surges, he resolves to gather the Claudes one last time, force the truth into the open, and end this deadly game before another life is lost. Poirot begins his day at the Stag Inn, where the flood has crept into the lower floors, forcing guests to huddle in the upper rooms. He spreads out his evidence on a rickety table, the locket with Rosaline's photograph, the cigarette case marked "Are You?", the Cape Town image of Underhay and Eileen, the notebook's cryptic warning, and the letter from Underhay himself, proclaiming his survival. Each item is a thread in a tapestry of deception, woven around Rosalind's fraudulent marriage and the fortune it secured. Poirot's mind churns with the final question. Who had the most to lose from Arden's blackmail? David, protecting his sister's wealth. Rolly, driven by loyalty to the Claudes. Francis, hiding her own schemes. Or Lionel, unraveling under the weight of a past sin. The detective decides to summon the family to the village hall, the only building still accessible for a final reckoning. He sends urgent notes to each Claude, requesting their presence to resolve the matter of Enoch Arden's death and Robert Underhay's legacy. Yes. The village hall is a fortress against the flood, its walls trembling under the storm's assault. The Claudes arrive, their faces etched with dread and defiance. Frances, her elegance frayed by mud and exhaustion, sits with her arms crossed, asceticism. Jeremy, pale and nervous, clutches a soaked hat. Lionel, disheveled and reeking of whiskey, slumps in a corner. Rolly, his broad frame tense, glares at the room. Rosaline, wrapped in a shawl, looks like a ghost, her eyes red from crying. And David, his jaw set, stands protectively beside her. Poirot steps forward, his voice steady, despite the chaos outside. "Ms. Amos," he begins, "a crime has been committed, and its roots lie in a lie that has haunted Warmsley Vale for years. Rosaline Claude is Eileen Corrigan, once wife of Robert Underhay, who did not die in Africa but lives still. Enoch Arden knew this and died for it. One of you killed him to protect this secret." He holds up the locket, its photograph, glinting in the dim light. This proves Rosaline's identity. The letter he produces, the sodden note, confirms Underhay's survival. The question is, who silenced Arden to keep the fortune? The room explodes in accusations. David shouts, "This is absurd. Underhay's dead and you've got no proof." Rosaline sobs, clutching her shawl. "I didn't know he was alive until Enoch came. I swear it." Raleigh steps forward, his voice low but fierce. "If Rosaline's a fraud, the money's ours, but I didn't kill anyone." Francis's eyes narrow. You're stirring up trouble, Poirot. What's your game? Lionel, trembling, mutters, "It's all falling apart." Poirot silences them with a raised hand. "The fabric at the river matches Monsieur Hunter's coat." The fisherman saw him with Arden, but he turns to Lionel. "You, doctor, saw something that night. Speak, or the truth will drown us all." Lionel's face crumples, and he staggers to his feet, his voice slurred but desperate. "It wasn't David," he says. I saw Rolly by the river. He was with Arden, arguing, pushing him. I didn't want to believe it, but I saw it." Rolly's face reddens, and he lunges toward Lionel. "You lying drunk?" he roars, but Jeremy restrains him. Poirot's eyes lock on Rolly. "Monsieur, Claude, you spoke of fixing things for your family. Did that include murder?" Rolly's shoulders slump, his anger giving way to despair. "I didn't mean to kill him," he whispers. "Arden came to me, said he knew Underhay was alive, wanted money to keep quiet. I met him at the river, tried to reason with him. He laughed, said the clothes were finished. Pushed him harder than I meant. He fell, hit his head on a rock. I panicked. But the river took him." The room falls silent, the weight of Rolly's confession sinking in. Rosaline weeps, David's face a mask of shock. Frances stands, her voice icy. "You fool, Rolly. You thought you'd save us, but you've ruined us." Poirot steps forward, his voice calm but unyielding. The motive was clear, to protect the family's claim to Gordon's fortune. But the truth, it cannot be drowned. "Monsieur Claude, you must face justice." Raleigh nods, his face ashen. "I did it for Lynn, for all of us. I'm sorry." Poirot turns to Rosaline. "Madame, you knew Underhay lived. Why did you hide it?" Rosaline's voice is barely audible. "I was afraid. David said we'd lose everything. I didn't know Arden would die." David's eyes blaze, but he says nothing, his silence damning. Poirot addresses the room. "The flood has exposed your secrets. Underhay's survival voids Rosaline's claim. Fortune returns to the Clodes, but at what cost?" As the meeting ends, P.C. Hargreaves arrives, summoned by Poirot's earlier note. Ali surrenders quietly, his confession sealing his fate. The Clodes disperse, their family fractured by greed and betrayal. Poirot walks to the river, now a raging beast, its waters carrying away the last of Warmsley Vale's illusions. The locket, the cigarette case, the letter, they've done their work, dragging the truth to the surface. Rosaline, no longer Eileen, faces an uncertain future, her fortune lost but her conscience freed. David's schemes have crumbled, his control over her broken. The Clodes, though victorious, are scarred by Rolly's crime. Poirot lights a cigarette, the smoke curling into the rain, and reflects on the human heart, its greed, its capacity for murder. The flood has receded, but its scars remain. A testament to a crime forgotten no more. The mystery is solved, and Hercule Poirot has triumphed. The river has spoken, and Warmsley Vale will never be the same. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share your thoughts on this gripping tale in the comments below. Thank you for joining us on this journey through Taken at the Flood. Stay tuned for more mysteries. Let's keep unraveling the secrets together.